Okay, so now it's time for feedback for our first intuitive target exercise. So, first of all, just before I show it to you, which I will in a moment, I want to say something about feedback. That what I felt in doing intuitive learning and exercises is it's really essential to get feedback for your perceptions and your explorations. And what this does is it helps your conscious mind start to recognize what's correct or what's related to what you're trying to perceive and what's not. And that oftentimes when we're intending to perceive something, we have a whole variety of different processes that are happening inside our mind and our awareness. And sorting them out is part of the learning of intuition. That we have thoughts and ideas and memories that are activated when we perceive something. So we may perceive a color red and it may be connected to something, but we may think about something else that's red. We saw a stop sign on the way to work, and that's what pops into our mind. And that's just our memory and our imagination. So starting to sort that out really helps. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you this object, and I'd like you just to notice your responses. Have your paper ready. And in fact, firstly what I'd like you to do is turn over the sheet of paper you were writing on for your intuitive process, so you have a blank sheet of paper. And then we're going to use that as a little sensing, and then we'll go back and look at what you wrote intuitively and see how that is. Okay, so here's the feedback. I have this box here, and I'm just going to take the box off, and then I'll show you what the object is. Alright, so this is the object of your first intuitive target. So first of all, just notice your feeling, your response, whatever, write it down. And then what I'd like you to do with your senses, before you start judging how you did, is I want you to engage with this object. And what I mean by that, I'm going to describe it to you, and just with me, imagine with your senses and reach out with your senses as if you were actually exploring this object. So what this is it's a plant, and it's alive. And it's kind of a deserty plant, like a succulent, like an aloe vera, except it's much more rigid than that. So these leaves, they don't bend very much. And there's little white spots all over the leaves. And they're kind of protruding a little bit, so it's almost like sandpaper. It's a real rough leaf. If I feel it, it's really scratchy. Each of the leaves has a point, and they're kind of in clusters. It has a little bit of an earthy smell. This soil was watered a little while ago, so you can smell the kind of hummusy, earthy smell of it. One thing I didn't ask you to do was taste, so if you may notice taste, there may be kind of an earthy taste. If you touch your tongue to the ceramic, you taste kind of another kind of earthy taste and texture. The only sound that I'm aware of, there's a little bit of a scratchy sound if I wiggle it. If I move the saucer, there's kind of the sound of porcelain or what's this, stoneware kind of rubbing against itself. So encourage you just to draw some of the shapes that you see, the shape of the curve, the shape of the leaves coming out, shape of the flower pot. And in all of this, you're connecting really with the sensory experience of what this is. It gets you out of your mind and your judgment. Really starting to sense and touch, feeling textures, shapes, sounds, smells. And once you have a sense that you've really kind of connecting with this object right now, what you're perceiving in the videos, then what I'd like you to do is go back to what you wrote on the other side of your sheet, turn over your paper, and I want you to look at all the different things you drew or wrote down or sketched, even your own feelings, and circle anything that you feel that's in any way connected to this target, this object. And it's just your perception. You're not trying to prove it to anybody else. It's just what feels like there's a connection for you. Anything at all. There may be nothing, it may be everything on the page. It's just entirely up to you. And that circling is feedback. You're telling your mind, your awareness, that you're paying attention to perceptions. So each time you do that, there's a learning, starting to differentiate what's perception versus what's imagination. You can do this exercise, have someone put an object in a box, do the same thing. Every time you do it, learning to relax and allow whatever kind of perceptions come in. So now at the end of this exercise, just noticing how you did. You may notice, one example might be, you might have one or two color or a shape, and then your mind filled it in, and you saw what it was, and you wrote it down, and you described it, and it had nothing to do with this object. And that's a very common experience. You may, your mind, your imagination filled it in rather than allowing perception. So if that happened, that's okay. Just notice it. It's a learning process. Try it again with the next exercise. So again, this is just one example of a whole series of exercises you can do that are in my book, A Joyful Intuition. And I'll be posting more of these kind of exercises, maybe every week or so. So have fun learning about your intuition.